Good morning. How are we doing this morning? Good morning. I'm going to invite you to stand and sing At the Cross, Sweetly Broken. To the cross I look, and to the cross I cling. Of its suffering I do drink, of its work I do sing. For on it my Savior, both bruised and crushed, show that God is love, and God is just. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am so lost for words, so lost in love. Sweetly broken, holy surrender. What a priceless gift, undeserved life. Though I've been given the cross crucified. You called me out of death. You called me into life. Slow down, take time, breathe in, he said he'd reveal what's to come. The thoughts in his mind, always higher than mine, he'll reveal all to come. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing, he's never failing. Sing praise, my soul, find strength in joy. Let his words lead you on. Do not forget great faithfulness. He'll finish all he's begun. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing, he's never failing. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing, he's never failing. You who hold the stars will call them out by name. Will surely keep your promise to me. Then I'll rise in your victory. You who hold the stars will call them out by name. Will surely keep your promise to me and rise in your victory. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing, he's never failing. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing, he's never failing. 'Cause he's in the waiting, he's in the waiting, he's in the waiting, he's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. I love you, Lord. Your mercy never fails me. In all my days, been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You've led me through the fire, darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. And with every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Here we go, everybody. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Life laid out, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, is running after me. All my life have been faithful. All my life have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life have been so, so good. And with every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. All right, I believe you may be seated.
All right, we'll invite the kids before you go off to Kids Zone. I want to invite the kids who are going to head back that way to come up on stage with me. And if you can come in the middle, that would be awesome. So, the kids can come up on stage. And you kind of sit towards the middle. So while they're coming on up here, just want to let you know you can sit down right real close here. What Adventureland is just so you know, those of you who are adults, what happens on the other side of the building every Sunday morning is just as important as what takes place in here, because we've got this great group of volunteers, and whether it's nursery or preschool or school-age kids, they believe that loving students and kids and children and babies and showing them the love of Jesus is really, really important. We use a video curriculum, so you don't have to say, I don't know how to teach kids. If you care about kids and you think that Jesus cares about them, then maybe Adventureland or preschool or nursery is a place where you might want to volunteer. So I got a question for all of you, and see if you know this answer, okay? Which of these things is better? One apple or 2 apples? Which is better? 2? Why? You have more. I mean, if you're really hungry, you can eat 2, or you could share with somebody. Here's another question. What's better? 1 flower or 2 flowers? 2. Why? Flowers are really good. And so if you have 2 flowers, that means it's really, really good. Okay? Here's a question. And by the way, this is what I've learned over the years of working with kids and students. If you bring out money, they suddenly pay attention because they think you're going to give it to them. And no, I'm not giving this to anybody. But I have a question. I got 2 $1 bills here. Which would you rather have? $1 or $2? Which one? 2. Why 2? You buy more stuff with 2, twice as much. I mean, I have no idea if $1 will buy anything anymore. I'm not even sure if $2 will buy stuff. But 2's better than 1. We just know that, right? You guys got the answer correct, and you're awesome. There's a Bible verse that our kids have been looking at for the past month, and it goes like this. It's found in Ecclesiastes 4:9, and it says this: 2 people are better than 1. They can help each other in everything they do. You know what? 2 is better than 1. Why do you think it's better to have 2 people than 1? Any thoughts? Why do you think 2 people are better than 1? Go ahead. You can do more stuff. You can accomplish more things with 2 people. What else? Is there any other thing that you can think of why 2 is better than 1? You know what? There's a song, and none of you have ever heard this song. 1 is the loneliest number. And I just dated myself, right? Okay. But 1 can be kind of lonely by yourself. Can you think of any other reasons why 2 people are better than 1? Go ahead. They're stronger together. There are just some things that I cannot do by myself, and I need some help, and it's the same for all of us. There are lots of reasons. And by the way, that's kind of what they've been looking back on, during their time together is why is 2 better than 1? And by the way, if we kept on reading in Ecclesiastes, it then goes on to tell us that 3 is actually better. The more people, the better, because we don't have all the answers and we need each other. So let me pray, and then you guys can go back, and then I'll talk to Mom and Dad. God, thank you that 2 are better than 1. Thank you for friends. Thank you for family. Thank you for parents. Thank you for each other, because we don't want to do this thing all by ourselves, because it is lonely. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, you guys can head to the back. Follow the flag back there. Good morning. I want to welcome you adults. I want to welcome our Richland Center campus. Thanks for being with us. And then also those of you who are watching online, wherever and whenever you're watching, thanks for being with us. So this is the 10th Sunday in 2025, and there's nothing like special about that. But something unique has happened once a month after a message on a Sunday. It happened in January, it happened in February, and it happened last Sunday. And I appreciate, by the way, your input and the things that you say after a message. So don't take anything I'm going to say here in the next 3 minutes, as I don't want to hear from you. But it's been interesting. It's been unusual. So back in January, if you were with us, you recall, I talked about a cow ruminating and how we're supposed to kind of ruminate on the Bible. And what that really means is you kind of chew on a verse, you swallow it, you spit it up and chew some more. And, I told you to be like a cow. And after the service, somebody came up to me who's a ruminant specialist. They know about cows ruminating. And they taught me some things that I've been chewing on ever since. And then the next month, February, we talked about the fact, and it's in this current series, we talked about the fact that God says that I am a masterpiece. You're a masterpiece. And I used the example of this this great work of art called the David, and it exists today. And I told you a little bit about the story behind that. And then after the service, you know what happened? Someone came up to me and told me more details about that particular work of art. They'd been reading about it literally the day before. And then last week I just kind of asked, if you've got any good ideas, because, I don't have a nickname. I really would like one. I've always wanted one. I asked you, if you got a good idea, let me know. And apparently I didn't stress the fact that it had to be a good idea. Because a few of you responded, and actually the most popular one, and I think there were 3 or 4 people who said this. Some of you suggested that I be called Scooter. I'm not 7. Yeah, no. And then I got a text message. And it was just one word. And it was this word, Reacher. And I said, what is, I didn't know it was a TV show, by the way. And you see this guy, his name is Reacher. He's a TV show. And the person told me, well, you're a preacher. You just take the P off. But you know what? Look at this guy. There is nothing that he and I have in common. I looked at that picture, and I'm like, man, I need to get to the gym. Yeah, so no, I don't want that one either. Because, look at that guy. And then, and some of you probably saw this on Facebook, then this picture appeared. I just want you to know that my face was put on the skipper's head. First of all, I do not want to be called Skipper. But beyond that, you know who the skipper was in this TV show, Gilligan's Island? I didn't watch it growing up. I saw reruns when I got older because I'm not that old. But you know what the skipper was? He was the captain of the ship. He's the reason that they were marooned on the island. It was his fault, and every episode, he's the one who looks like a goofball. Yeah, I don't want to be the skipper. In fact, some of you know we've got 2 people named Lori on our staff, and I sometimes joke about which one I like the most. After Lori made that, so in the past 10 weeks, I have learned something about ruminating that I did not know. I have learned something about this great work of art called the David that I did not know. I have also learned that you guys really stink at giving nicknames. And kind of bringing to the topic of today, in some ways you really fail when it comes to nicknames. So we are in this series. We are looking at who do you think you are? Those ideas, those thoughts, those things, the way that, and whether it's we say it to ourselves or whether other people say it about us, what we say about ourselves, and we're comparing it to what God really says about us. Because, and I've said this every week because it's really, really important. What you think about yourself, what others say about you, isn't nearly as important as what God says about you. I know those voices that other people have said, those hurtful words, they hurt. and they're hard to overcome. But what God says about you, it's much more important. And so we're going to kind of like start today a little different. We're going to start today by looking at a phrase that sometimes we say this about ourselves. And maybe you don't, mean it 100%, but from time to time we say this. And sometimes we say it more than once and more than twice. And we say it, and sometimes we begin to believe it. And it's this phrase, I am a failure. And you know what? The interesting thing is if you look at it, the younger people are, the more they say it about themselves. What I mean by that is this, is if you look at studies, people in their 50s say, I am a failure, but people in their 40s say it more. People in their 30s say it more. People in their 20s say it more. And the really sad thing is when you get to teens, you know that about 47% of teens, when asked this, they said, yeah, I am a failure. Something's wrong. And maybe you don't say it about your life, in general, I am a failure, that's just who I am. But can we be honest? We all fail sometimes. Some of us, we've failed in relationships. We have failed as parents. We have failed as a friend. We've failed at work. We failed at a certain task. We failed when we tried to do that. We failed when we... And we live in a culture, we like to look at failure, right? Social media and TV, we capitalize on failure. We show replays of failure. In fact, just this weekend during a basketball tournament, the game was close and a person was about to shoot the tying free throw, and his teammate stepped into the lane accidentally, costing his team a tie. And they showed it over and over and over. He failed. And every single one of us, we will find people in our lives who will look at our lives, who will look at what we have accomplished, what we haven't accomplished, where we achieved, where we didn't achieve. You can find people who will say, failure, failure, failure. And if we listened enough, whether it's ourselves telling that or if we listen to other people, if we listen enough, we will begin to believe it. And you know what happens when we listen to voices that say, I am a failure, I am a failure, I am a failure? You know what happens over time? I quit, I quit, I quit. We're just not going to try anymore. I'm a failure. So what does God say? I mean, we got this God who's, he's perfect. He's holy. He's never failed. But he has seen every single one of your failures. What does he say? If there was anyone who ever could rightly look at you and look at me and say, failure, what does God say? I got really good news for you. He doesn't say failure. In fact, real briefly here, I want to look at all the Bible verses where God calls somebody a failure. We're just going to, breeze through these because, not to spend a lot of time on them, but real fast. Here's all the Bible verses where God says to somebody, he looks at an individual and says, failure. Are you ready? Here we go. Yeah, there aren't any. There's never a time where God looks at someone and says failure. He does say people have failed. But God has never looked at a person, never looked at someone like you, never looked at someone who made the same mistakes you did, never looked at someone who made worse mistakes than you, and said, failure. So instead of calling people failure, this is what the Bible says kind of about that word failure. It says this: failure is an event. It's never a person. Failure is an event. It's never a person. Have you failed? Yes. Have I failed? Yes. Have some of us have failed in big ways. Some of us have repeated failures, and we think, when am I ever going to get a handle on this? Some of us, even this past week, you failed in a unique way that you never failed before, and you're like, whoa, didn't think I could do that. But you're not a failure. Every single one of us, including me, including you, including him, including her, we fail, but you're not a failure. So what we're going to do the rest of this service is we're going to look at 3 stories of really big failures. I mean, these 3 stories, you think you failed? They are in the Fail Hall of Fame, if there is such a thing. And here's what I want you to remember. Sometimes what God says about you is most important, and sometimes what God doesn't say about you is really important. Here's what God does not say about these 3, and he doesn't say it about you, and he doesn't say it about me. I am a failure. Doesn't say that. Do these people fail? They fail big time. Do you fail? Yeah. Are you going to fail tomorrow? Some of us will fail tomorrow. Some of us might even get it in today. I don't know. But you're not a failure. What does God say about you, even though you fail? So the first story is kind of like, this guy, he had a target on his back. I mean, he wasn't wearing a T-shirt, but he had a target on his back. I mean, I don't know about you when you were kids, but when I was in elementary school, the joke kind of was, we'd try to stick a kick me sign or slap me sign on somebody's back, and somebody walk up to you and yeah. This guy did not have a slap me sign or a kick me sign or a target on his back, but he failed and he became the target. He failed repeatedly, and he found himself in the middle of a place where he was the target. He was the target. His name was Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat was the king of Judah. And the first thing that we find out about this king is found in 2 Chronicles 17:6. This is what it says about him. His heart was courageous in the ways of the Lord. That sounds good, right? That doesn't sound like a failure. A little background about Jehoshaphat. We are told, and we don't have time to look at all these verses, but he was esteemed. He was respected. Other kings in the Middle East looked up to him. There were actually other kings who, if I could be just like Jehoshaphat, because of the way he followed God. He was an example until he wasn't. Jehoshaphat had a problem. He had a failure, and it was a pattern for him. And some of us have patterns of failure, right? You really struggle with that issue, or you really struggle with that temptation, or there's just a certain way that you struggle, and it seems like you struggle over and over and over, and you just can't get a handle on it, and you say, I'm a failure. Jehoshaphat had a problem. It was a pattern. And his pattern was this. He chose really bad relationships with other kings, and he made really horrible alliances with people he had no business aligning himself with. And he made one of those alliances with a king that was just evil and ridiculous, and his name was Ahab. And Ahab, he was such a bad king and such a bad person. Ahab did things like sacrifice his child to foreign gods, sacrifice his flesh and blood to foreign gods. And Jehoshaphat said, hey, you and I, let's have a pact. Let's work together. And so they decided that they were going to go to fight just a city, a common average city. So two kings of two kingdoms were going to collaborate against this one city. It was going to easy battle, done, one and done, boom, 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 shoot, 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 done. And that other king, Ahab, he had an idea for her, Jehoshaphat. And this was the idea. He said, so Jehoshaphat, when we go to battle, I want you to dress like a king. I want you to wear the purple, and I want you to be all shiny, and I want the flags flying above you, and you get all the fanfare, and everybody knows you're the king. And I'll go there in secret. I'll kind of stand to the back. I'll hide. I don't want anybody to know that I'm the king. We want you to, everybody knows you're the king, right? You know why Ahab did that? Because he knew that the people they were going to fight, this was their plan. It's found in 2 Chronicles 18:30. This was the plan. Now the king of Syria had commanded the captains of his chariots, fight with neither small nor great, but only with the king of Israel. In other words, this is your job. Get the king. We don't want to take out an army or anything. We just want the king. If you take out the head, you take out. So Jehoshaphat was going into battle dressed like the king against a force that was only going to try to kill one person. Who was that? The king. He was going into battle, and he had a target on his back. Sometimes when you and I fail, it feels like we got a target on our back. He made these poor choices. He failed, and he failed, and he failed. And suddenly, he's going into battle, and everyone is aiming at him. You ever feel when you fail that people are looking at you? So guess how the story turns out. In 2 Chronicles 18:31, this is how the story goes. As soon as the captains of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, they said, "It's the king of Israel." In other words, shoot. So they turned to fight against him. And Jehoshaphat cried out, and the Lord helped him. God drew them away from him, for as soon as the captains of the chariots saw that it was not the king of Israel, they turned back from pursuing him. But a certain man drew his bow at a random and struck the king of Israel between the scale armor and the breastplate. You hear what just happened? Jehoshaphat, who had failed, repeated failure, put a target on his back. Shoot me. God helped him. And then what I like about this story is that there was an archer, and he was ready to shoot, and someone said, "Don't shoot." And he went, "Oops." And the king of Israel was killed, but Jehoshaphat was spared. It was King Jehoshaphat who had failed. Want to know what happened the rest of Jehoshaphat's life? Well, he continued to make some pretty poor alliances, because you know what? Even sometimes when God helps us, we still fail. But he did usher in an unprecedented time of peace for Judah. He also, he took some teachers, and he sent teachers out to other communities around him and actually to other countries to teach people how to worship the one true God. And then also later on when we get to the book of Matthew, when we look at all the people who are in Jesus' ancestry, it says this in Matthew 1:8. And Asaph, the father of Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat, the father of Joram. In other words, part of his purpose was he was going to be one of the several great-grandfathers of Jesus. This guy who failed. What does that say about you and I when we fail? Because Jehoshaphat, it was this pattern. He did it over and over and over. He just couldn't get past that one failure in his life. Here's what it tells us about failure and about God and what he calls you. I am chosen, not a failure. I am chosen, not a failure. You know, sometimes you and I, we've made choices and we thought this is the best thing for me. It's the best decision. It's a great opportunity, and it turns out it wasn't. And Jehoshaphat did that over. I got to have a relationship with that king. I got to have a relationship with that king. I got to have a failure, 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 failure. And some of us have done the same thing. I got to take that opportunity. That opportunity's for me. I have to do that. It's meant for me. It should be mine. It's failure. You want to know why you're not a failure in that case, and neither was Jehoshaphat? Because Proverbs 19:21 says this. Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. God has a plan for you. And here's what happens when you fail. God has never looked at your failure. He's never looked at my failure and said this. I'm going to move on to plan B. I'm going to choose someone else. There's got to be somebody better than him or her. God had a plan for Jehoshaphat, even though he failed. God has a plan for you, even though you fail. But I have a pattern of failing. He had a pattern of failing. He did it over and over and over again. You can't fail your way out of God's purpose for you. Your bad choices doesn't mean that God won't choose you. And some of us, we're familiar with a Bible character. His name is Samson. And Samson and that guy I showed earlier, Reacher, they have a lot more in common than I do. Because, think about if you know something about Samson. The story of Samson is he's this really strong guy with long hair. And the funny thing about Samson is in children's Bible stories, we make Samson out to be a hero. And we put a Superman cape on him, and we think he's just the coolest guy. You know what Samson actually is? He's actually one of the biggest failures in the Bible. So before Samson was born, an angel came to his parents to say, you're going to have this really amazing child. And they were promised something. And this promise is found in Judges 13:5. He, Samson, shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Your son is going to be born, and God is going to use your son in amazing ways. He's going to help, he's going to be what really helps save Israel from the Philistines. And you know what? For the bulk of his life, you know what Samson did? He failed. If you read the story of Samson, he didn't have like a pattern or just one area of his life where he failed. He spread the wealth. He failed in all kinds of ways. He chose the wrong women. I didn't say wrong woman. He chose wrong women over and over and over again. He touched the wrong things. He drank the wrong things. He gambled with the wrong people. He had wrong friends. He trusted the wrong person. He cut his hair at the wrong time. And some of us, it's not just like one area where you fail. You just feel like, I fail here, I fail there, I fail everywhere. I fail in so many different ways. And that's kind of what Samson was. It's hard to look at Samson's life and say, yeah, he got it right there, because he didn't. When you read the story, it's almost as if his entire life, when given the opportunity, Samson failed. Here's what I know. Some of us feel like we're a failure. I'm pretty sure you have not failed as much as Samson. He was really good at it. And so we get to the end of Samson's story, the end of his life, and it was not a pleasant life. By the way, your failures can hurt the way life turns out for you, and here's how Samson's life ended. He was weak. The Philistines had actually poked his eyes out. And they had, he'd been arrested and he had been imprisoned. And the Philistines, all of their religious leaders, because they didn't worship the one true God, they'd made sport of him. They brought him out and they just wanted to mock him and make fun of him. So they put him on a stage so 3,000 people could laugh at him. Because sometimes when you fail, you end up in places you never expected. But he's weak, and he seems like he's useless. Sometimes when we fail, we feel useless. And after a lifetime of failure, while he's standing in front of a room full of people who were laughing at him, this is what Samson said in Judges 16:28. O Lord, please remember me, and please strengthen me only this once, O God. I have failed my entire life, God. Just once. Just once. You ever feel like you're failure after failure after failure? And so this is how the story goes. God strengthened him. He happened to touch both the pillars that kept the building up. He pushed the pillars down. His strength came back for just a moment, just a second like that. And 3,000 Philistines were killed that day. And it says this about his life in the Judges 16:30. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his lifetime. You know that promise that God had made to his parents? He kept it. And by the way, this story doesn't mean that when you and I fail, it doesn't make our life difficult, because failure makes life hard. Samson's life was hard. It wasn't supposed to be that hard. If he'd made just a few better choices along the way. So the moral of the story is not, even when you fail, life is easy, because it's not. It does mean this, though, that even when you fail, you're not a failure. Because here's what happened, and here's what I know about you and me, and I know this about Samson. I am useful, not a failure. You know what God planned to do with Samson at the beginning of his life, and he failed and failed and failed and failed and failed? God did what he planned. Some of us, maybe you don't say you're a failure, but maybe you just say you're faulty. God uses faulty people. Samson was faulty. So here's what you need to know about when God says about you. You're chosen. You're not a failure. You're useful. You're not a failure. God still can use you. You may not think so. He may not think so. She may not think so. But that doesn't matter. God says you are. This last story is not a person. This last story is about a sheep. And trust me, it's a bad sheep. It's not a person. It's a sheep that failed. So Jesus tells this parable about a sheep that failed. So he told them this parable. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying, "Then rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." So, first of all, when Jesus told this to these people, and he said, which one, doesn't everybody, if they have 100 sheep, they lose one, don't they leave the 99 and go find the one? You know what their answer would have been? Nobody does that. Because if a sheep gets lost, the sheep gets lost. You don't leave the 9. That makes no sense, Jesus. When he asked that question, they would have said, nobody does that. You know what else nobody ever does? Nobody, if they find that sheep, nobody ever decides to throw a party. I mean, what kind of party do you throw for a lost sheep found party? Like this? Nobody does that. You know what? Jesus wasn't talking about sheep. He was actually talking about you and me. It wasn't about sheep. Because shepherds, those who watch for sheep, when they lose a sheep, they lose a sheep. Shepherds, when they lose a sheep, they don't leave 99, go off, find the one, put it on their shoulders, come back and throw a party. That doesn't happen. Jesus said this, but then he also said this about himself in John 10:11. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the one who goes and looks for the lost one, the one who failed to stay, the one who failed to follow me. I'm the one who goes. It's not a story about shepherds and sheep parties. It's a story about God, and it's a story about you, and it's about me when you and I fail. And here's really, really good news. You know who you are when you fail? I am the one, not a failure. I am the one. You know what we do with each other when we fail? Sometimes we'll look at somebody and say, you know what, I've reached my limit with you. This is the final straw with you. My patience is wearing thin with you. You know what God has never said about you? My patience is wearing thin. This is the last straw. You only get one more shot. God's never said that about you. You're the one. In fact, there's a famous Christian author. His name is St. Augustine. He says this: God loves each of us as if there were only one of us. That's how God feels about you. When you fail, he still loves you. He's never decided to move on to somebody else, somebody more promising, someone who hasn't made as many mistakes. He still loves you. And by the way, this St. Augustine, he failed a lot. He wrote a biography about himself, and he failed a lot. So you fail, and I fail. You're not a failure. You are chosen. You are useful. You're the one. So what do you do? What do you and I do when we fail? Because it's going to happen. The first thing we do is this: just admit it. How many of us spend a lot of energy trying to cover it up or pretend or make excuses or in some way or another, I didn't fail. Proverbs 28:13 says this about failure: whoever conceals his transgressions, his failures, will not prosper. But he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. Just admit it. Don't spend so much energy, so much time. Got to cover it up, and I want you to... Yeah. And once you admit it, once that you admit that you've fallen, that you have failed, you're not a failure, you know what you do? You get up. Don't look at how many times you've failed and count them and count them and count them and count them and say, I'm just done. I'm not going to try anymore. I quit. Just get up. Proverbs 24:16 says this, for the righteous falls 7 times and rises again. So you know what you do when you fail? I failed, and I get up. And when it happens again, I failed, and you get up. You're not a failure. God has never called you a failure. If he was going to call anybody a failure, it would have been Jehoshaphat, because he failed the same way over and over and over and over. And then there's Samson. He failed he failed here, he failed there. He just failed in all kinds of ways. But he wasn't a failure. And this last one is really important, and it happens to be actually the title of this message too. But this is it. I am family, not a failure. I am family, not a failure. God still wants you around, even though you failed. But I've really failed in big ways. Yeah, so has Samson. I have failed over and over. I've struggled in the same thing. So has Jehoshaphat. I have wandered so far, just like that sheep did. God would like you as a member of his family. Because it says this in John 1:12. But to all who did receive him, Jesus, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. It's not about how often you have failed. It's about what Jesus did. Doesn't matter if you have small failures. If you just, you have a pattern, you just fail in this one way over and over and over and you're struggling. And by the way, if that's you, maybe you should get some help. Or maybe you just fail in all kinds of different ways. You just spread the wealth and fail all over the place. And maybe you've just wandered. God would like you as a member of his family. In a few weeks we're going to celebrate Good Friday and Easter, the life of Jesus, the death of Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus. He came to earth. He was born to 2 fairly poor individuals, lived in a town of about 75 people, lived a perfect life, died a death that you and I deserved, and gave his life for us. That's how you become part of the family. He does not focus on your failures. He does not look at me and say, failure. If you're a follower of Jesus, here's who you are. You are chosen. You are useful. You're the one that Jesus came for. And if you're not a follower of Jesus, he would like you to be a member of his family. And you simply ask. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you have never looked at any of us, and I don't know what everybody's done here. You've never looked at any of us and said failure. We have failed. I have failed you. But you sent your son to die in our place. And so I pray if there's somebody watching or here in person in Dodgeville or Richland Center who thinks that they're a failure, that you can't love them, that they've done too much or failed too many times. That's simply not true. They'd simply say, God, I have failed. I acted like Jehoshaphat. I acted like Samson. I acted like that sheep. I have failed. But Jesus came to pay my price, and I believe that he did that for me. God, thank you. And help us to not only look at ourselves and realize we are not a failure, but I pray that we would look at the people around us and we would never, ever call somebody a failure. Because in your eyes, they're not. In Jesus' name, amen. So before we go, we've got some announcements we'd like to make. First of all, our monthly serving focus for March is to provide funds, to provide meals for senior citizens in our county, Seniors United for Nutrition. And so you can look at the details of how much it costs to provide a meal. And some of the meals, people come here and eat, and some of the meals are delivered to those who are homebound or don't come out for a variety of reasons. If you want to help with that, you can just put monthly serving focus, MSF, is all you need to write on an envelope. Put it in the offering box, and we'll get the money to them. 2 Fridays from now, on March 28th, we are having a movie night called The Forge, and this is for our community. So we want you to come, but we want you to bring your neighbor or bring a family or whatever. We're going to have hot dogs and other food. We still could use some people to give some hot dogs and buns if you want to donate stuff for that. That would be awesome. We have a team that will be serving that night. Some people have already volunteered for that, but we still could use some food. And you can let us know if you can help that way. This Tuesday is Ruby's Tuesday, and it's supposed to be almost 70 degrees. So you get to come out and serve and work on your tan all at the same time. So we haven't, because of the weather, we haven't done this for a couple of months. So we would love to have you help. You don't have to come for the whole time. If you can only come for 2 hours at the beginning or 2 hours in the middle or 2 hours at the end to help clean up, it would be awesome. We could use your help that day. So please pray for that as we kind of get this back rolling. I don't think we're going to have bad weather, at least through summer. I don't know. But we're looking forward to that. And then lastly, we want to start a new team, and there's some information here in Dodgeville in your program, but we'd like to start what we're calling a connection team. And it's a little bit different than greeters. It's a little bit different than the information desk, but the connection team is you'd be here once a month, and when somebody new comes, you help them connect. That's why we call it that. What we would have you'd introduce yourself, you'd show them if they have kids, how to check their kids in, you'd show them really important things like where's the bathroom, where do you take your kids to, you'd kind of show them where they can get a cup of coffee, you tell them, hey, this is this Sunday and we're doing this. If there's something special going on, if there's not, you just tell them, hey, the service kind of goes like this. And then after the service, you talk to them and say, hey, did you have any questions about the service? Was there something that confused you or whatever? You tell them your name, you get their name, so we make sure that every new person who walks through these doors meets and knows at least one person, and you can introduce them. If you'd want to be a part of that team, I would like to have this organized by Easter. So please talk to me. But that's really what you do is when a new person comes through the door, we want you to meet them, show them around, and welcome them, because every person who walks through these doors, we want to love them really, really well. So if you can help us with that, we'd really appreciate it. Please take your connection card, fill that out, put your prayer request on there. If you are a first, second, or third time visitor, please let us know. We have a gift for you. If you can help us take the chairs down, stack them, and put them against the wall so the building can get used the rest of this week, we'd really appreciate it. I'll be down front. I'd love to meet you or pray with you, and thanks for being with us today.